네, 감사합니다. I can give you some of my thoughts about various subjects, especially, of course, about music. But to tell you the truth, the reason why I asked that we play was so that I wouldn't have to speak as much. So, well, this title was not really of my doing either, about something about perfect joy or about what I learned from conducting. But what comes to my mind is to say something about sound and about listening. My job as a conductor, first of all, is to listen. Listen to various different elements. And the first one, of course, is to listen to the orchestra. This idea of listening and then some kind of selective process. For students, it could be like selective learning. So listening, selective, this learning, and then following. Those three, I think, things have guided my life and has brought me here today. It was not because I knew what I wanted exactly. I wanted to be a conductor at a young age. No, I don't have a particular driving ambition to be the greatest conductor in the world, but I have followed mostly the advice of a lot of people, starting with my, of course, parents, especially my mother. Then came different people in my life who have given me advice. And if there's one thing that I have in my personality, I say often that I'm no genius. I don't have actually an extraordinary musical talent. I don't even have the most outstanding musical talent of the 7 siblings in my own family. I consider my sisters more gifted. One thing that has served me very well is this selective listening. Very great musicians and sometimes just normal people would give me some kind of advice or would say something, and I have a very poor memory for details, and so I forget everything. But something usually sticks out and I remember it. It's usually one word or one sentence. And so when I went to the United States at age 8, my first piano teacher in Seattle, Washington, she said to me after I auditioned for her, well, I will accept you as a student, but only under one condition, that you don't come to study with me to become a piano player, but you come to me if you want to become a good musician. So I would say that's the one phrase I remember of those 6 years that I spent with her, although we exchanged so much. But it was her who gave me this idea, without even me knowing, to explore music more in the broad sense. And that is why I'm a conductor today. The first, next sort of really important point was when I was 13, I went to Los Angeles to play for the master class of a great cellist my sister was studying with called Gregor Piatigorsky. And I played the piano part of the Brahms double concerto, quite difficult piece. And I was not playing very well in those days, was mostly going out playing football rather than practicing. So my piano technique was very poor. But somehow I managed. And he said just one thing. Maybe he said many things, but I only remember one thing. And he said, "Did you ever think about conducting?" So he didn't tell me that, well, he must have told me, oh, that was very nice, you play so well. But then he must have mentioned at some point, oh, maybe you should think about conducting. But that's the only thing I remember. Then after we skipped many, many years, and I had very great difficulties with choosing to be a conductor because of being in this kind of leadership position, especially in music, is a very strange and unnatural thing. Musicians are supposed to play an instrument or sing. The last thing you're supposed to be doing is not make any noise yourself and just waving your arms and saying for other people to play. And even worse, you have to keep on correcting them and trying to lead them. That is the role of leaders in other fields, of politicians, of business leaders. But as a musician, it's not natural. So I had a long period where it was difficult to choose, and I loved to play the piano. And the next great influence was a conductor called Carlo Maria Giulini, one of the great conductors of the past, one of the few real masters that we would call. And although I had occasion to play with him as a soloist also, he told me two things. In fact, in 3 years that I spent with him as an assistant, as his assistant at the Los Angeles Philharmonic, I was very timid, and I dared to ask him only one question per year. So the first question I asked him after 1 year of being his assistant, I dared to ask just one question, and that was because I was having a very great difficulty with one piece, and I thought surely he must know the answer. So I took this symphony and I asked him this question: what is this? Why doesn't this sound well? And so he looked at this, and even though he could have immediately answered, he said, I'll think about this and we'll talk about it after I think about it. So many days later, when I thought he had forgotten, he called me to the dressing room, and he said, and he had his score of the piece, and he opened to the first page. I opened to the first page, and I waited. And he said, after a while, he said, Mr. Chung, it takes time. And so I said, thank you very much, you know. And so, but I took that over the years. Of course, that has stayed with me for 30 years, that for many, many different kinds of meanings. Number one of which is that we as musicians, we must find our own answer. Number two, it gave me, in the end, a great deal of encouragement, because it meant that he felt that I could do it. Because it would have been very easy for him with his experience, as it would be for me today, to tell a young conductor, well, that's the problem, well, you do this, you make the clarinets play a little bit more, you take the horns softer, and it should sound fine. But then that is not the best advice most of the time. That's an advice you give when you feel that the person is limited in talent. So this idea of, so I skipped to the second point. Second year, finally he came to a concert that I conducted. And it was with a poor youth orchestra, and I was very embarrassed. And he came to the dressing room and he said, just again one sentence. He said, Mr. Chung, you are a conductor. And so it seems like a simple sentence, but coming at that point of my life where I was struggling to make this decision, that gave me a lot of courage, and that has also helped me. So many, many people have given me this kind of guidance, so I feel that I was led to this point. I don't feel that I decided that I wanted to do this, and especially in politics or in business, I know that you're supposed to, you know, this fighting spirit and overcome all the difficulties. Yes, but for us it's a different way. And I think this idea of listening has a value for young people and of society in general, because it is kind of a talent in itself that should be nurtured, and that is the value of this great music. Now, I come here, I'm standing here playing and especially talking to you for only one reason, because I want to convince you of this great music. Otherwise, there is no reason why I should be here. My life, as other musicians, we are here to serve this music. So what does this mean? This music is the only music in my analysis in the history of this planet, the only kind of music that has known this kind of continuous, over 1,000 years of development. But development, just 1,000 years going from generation to generation, means nothing if you don't have a certain development and improvement process. And the reason why this music has such greatness and depth is that genius after genius composer has then learned from the previous one. Just imagine, before Bach, already 500 years, but Haydn, Mozart, then Beethoven coming along. So continuous development over 1,000 years, and there's a lot to be learned. And the first element for music is the sound. And the sound, I talk about sound almost every single rehearsal and many times during a rehearsal. And the sound comes from where? Of course, it comes from within. And I'm convinced that we all have a great, great sound inside. So how to listen to that voice, then this immense dedication that helps bring out over many, many years this sound that you have, this inner voice, and then it speaks. But these great composers are what help us bring out this sound. I'm maybe over-exaggerating, but you forgive me because I'm here to sell in my way this music. Or it's not to sell, to convince you to listen more, because it helps, I think, listening to music of this great depth, it helps acquire this listening and selective process that is so helpful in life. Thank you.